Hey, what's going on, y'all? How y'all doing? If you enjoying my content thus far, I have more off-season videos planned. Please sure to like, comment, and subscribe on every single last one of them. My videos will pop up on your feed as soon as possible, or however the hell YouTube's algorithm works. But today I want to be talking about these two teams that you're seeing on my screen that I'm playing in NBA 2K24 because screw 2K25 and 2K26. I can already tell you 2K26 is not going to be good. 2K25. Wait a minute. Why are we talking about 2K? 2K sucks. But anyways, I want to talk about these two teams that are quietly winning the offseason, the Atlanta Hawks and the Denver Nuggets. So going into the offseason, there were a lot of questions circulating and speculating about the future of Trae Young with the Atlanta Hawks and Nikola Jokic with the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, y'all saw the recent report of Nikola not signing his extension with Denver, which led to a lot of people asking, is Jokic going to leave Denver should Denver falter in the playoffs yet again before the conference finals? With the season Nikola Jokic had, a lot of people had an argument that he should have won MVP instead of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which Jokic, I think he averaged a triple-double this year, if I'm not mistaken, or damn near close to it. And a lot of people said, how the hell did he not win MVP? But a lot of people got to realize that Shai led his team in scoring, and he was the NBA's leading scorer this past season, if I'm not mistaken. Fact check me on that if I'm wrong. But also, again, his team was the number one seed all year. So, yeah, there are some exceptions to the rule with winning MVP with the type of season Jokic had. Obviously, we saw it with Russell Westbrook in Oklahoma City in 2017. So I can definitely see why people say Nikola Jokic should have won MVP, and in my personal opinion, he was robbed of it in 2023 to Joel Embiid. But we can't lie here. SGA deserved that MVP with the season that he and his team had. So that was a pretty close race. I'm not gonna lie. Jokic was not robbed. I don't care what anyone says. Jokic was not robbed. But even in spite of that, ever since winning the NBA Finals in 2023, Jokic and the Nuggets have came one game short in the previous 2 years of heading to the conference finals. Obviously, they lost Game 7 against the Minnesota T-Wolves in 2024 when Ant Edwards, Nas Reed, Jaden McDaniels were all hitting shot after shot, and then the infamous Rudy Gobert fadeaway as well. And then obviously they got the doors blown off them in Game 7. Y'all can see my series recap vid on that as well. So definitely there were some questions raised about the future of Nikola Jokic on this Denver Nugget team. Obviously there's going to be more speculation, especially with the recent news of him not signing his extension. On the other side of the map, there are some questions about Trae Young and his future with the Atlanta Hawks as well. Obviously, the Hawks tried everything. They tried pairing him with DeJounte Murray. That fell on his face because they only managed one playoff run together. I don't know if DeJounte played in that 2023 first round series, but I know Trae had a lot of good moments against the Boston Celtics in those 6 games. But since then, they have fallen short of the playoffs every single time. They got the doors blown off them by the Chicago Bulls in 2024. This past year, they got the doors blown off them against the Orlando Magic, and they came up in overtime short of being the 10th seeded Miami Heat to claim that 8th spot to face the Cleveland Cavaliers, to which Miami got absolutely decimated by Cleveland, especially in that fateful Game 4. So with Trae and Joker's future hanging in the balance with their respective teams, these two teams went all in the offseason, getting these two players major help, which I think will play a big factor into the season, especially when it comes to next year's playoffs. Now, obviously, I covered both Denver and the Hawks in my Week 1 offseason recap. But I want to keep this about them because I want to expand on it and touch on it even more on why I think they won the offseason. For the Denver Nuggets, they got off of Michael Porter Jr.'s contract and they traded him to the Brooklyn Nets for Cam Johnson. Michael Porter Jr., even though he's a career 40.6% three-point shooter, like I pointed out in my offseason vid a couple weeks ago, you look at the volume of attempts that Michael Porter has shot. In 2022-23, their run to the finals, he shot 7.3 threes a game. He shot 7 threes a game, or damn near 7 threes a game, in 2024. And then in 2025, he shot 6 threes a game. For some context, well, yeah, it looks pretty efficient because he shot 41% and then 39% the last 2 years. You look at it with this type of context. James Harden in his MVP years with Houston shot 10 threes in 2018, 13 threes in 2019, and 20 threes in the 2020 campaign. And then obviously he shot the same amount of attempts that Michael Porter Jr. Shot the last 2 years with his stints with Brooklyn, Philly, and the last couple of years with the Clippers. So obviously, while Michael Porter Jr. is a better shooter than James for that matter, if Mikey Porter attempted the same amount of threes as James Harden, the percentages his percentages would have been as equal to Harden in those MVP years. Y'all could go look that up on ESPN. While Michael Porter Jr., again, he's a good shooter, and this is not a knock on him. I think he's a good player. I just felt like his fit in Denver was slowly starting to fizzle out, especially since obviously him getting injured did not help. But if you look at this past season, Michael Porter Jr. averaged 18 a game, but unfortunately, he cut his points in half in the 2025 playoffs. Again, he was battling a shoulder injury. I get that. But his lack of efficiency and inconsistency overall killed this Denver team when they needed it the most against Oklahoma City. Not so much against the Clippers. Cam being on this team gives you a better floor spacer, and I think he's a lot more consistent shooting the ball. Obviously, when you look at Cam Johnson's stats, Cam is a 39% three-point shooter. So from the eye test, okay, he might not be an upgrade from Michael Porter Jr., but you gotta look at it this way. When Chris Paul landed with the Phoenix Suns, and obviously Cam played next to Devin Booker, Cam shot 39% his rookie year, 35% his second year, and then his last 2 years he shot over 40%. He was almost a 50-40-90 guy. Obviously, we're all going to look at his percentages with Brooklyn, and he said, okay, he might not be that much of an upgrade from Michael Porter Jr., and he shot the same amount of attempts, but we got to keep in mind, Cam Johnson in Brooklyn, I feel like Jacques Vaughn and then the coach for them right now, I don't know, I forgot his name. I think he was one of the Suns coaches at one point. Um, so this Brooklyn coach kind of gave Cam Johnson an inconsistent role per se, like where there were nights where he was the main scorer, and then they had to rotate between him, Cam Thomas, I should say, and Mikal Bridges. So obviously, yeah, his stat, like he averaged 18 a game last year, same amount as Michael Porter Jr. But I think when you put him next to a guy like Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, I think you could slowly put him back into the role that he was suited for when he was playing next to Devin Booker, when he was playing next to Chris Paul, and then to an extent DeAndre Ayton as well. And in my opinion, because I've seen both Michael and Cam play, Cam is a much more consistent shooter than Michael Porter Jr. He was the reason why the Suns got a lot of big playoff wins, especially in their run to the finals against Milwaukee, hitting big shots against the Lakers, hitting big shots against, ironically, Denver, and hitting big shots against the Clippers as well. And like I alluded to just a second ago, Cam will get those same looks with Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray that he got with Devin Booker and Chris Paul. Obviously different players, but he'll be back into that same role that he had with Phoenix. And then obviously the other signings, getting Bruce Brown back is a huge deal for Denver because him coming off the bench, like I said, I think I said in my Pacers video as well when I said they should get Bruce Brown and start him next to Andrew Nembhard. Bruce can do everything you ask him to. He can rebound, he can pass, he can shoot, he can defend, and more importantly, he could take a lot of ball pressure off of one Jamal Murray. And then if Christian Brown needs a blow on defense or he gets into foul trouble, you can insert Bruce Brown in, obviously with Peyton Watson as well. Tim Hardaway Jr. is also a major signing as well, considering the work he put in against the Knicks as a Detroit Piston last year. In that game 3 of that series last year, he shot, I believe it was like 6 threes, and he was really red hot to start off the game. But I think most importantly, and I saw him and Cam Johnson on the Young Man of the Three podcast, where Tim said, "Yo, I think playing with Jokic is gonna be like playing with Luka all over again because Jokic and Luka, obviously being best buddies, they do have a similar type of feel for the game. Obviously, we've seen it with Luka plenty of times with Dallas and parts of the Lakers this year. And obviously, we know what Nikola Jokic can do when you have reliable shooters around him. Tim Hardaway Jr. will get those same type of looks playing next to Joker. Those same looks, he was able to get those looks playing next to Luka and then Kyrie Irving later down the line before ultimately he was traded to Detroit. And then finally, we get to Jonas Valanciunas. JV has obviously been a starter for a great amount of his career, if not all of his career. He was a starter on those Raptors teams when the Raptors were really good with DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry. Obviously, he was one of the reasons they made the conference finals in 2016 with his rebounding, his toughness, and his post defense against guys like Ian Mahimi, Miles Turner, and then whoever the Miami Bigs were at the time. I didn't think Whiteside played, and there was no such thing as Bam Adebayo in 2016 until they drafted him a couple years later. But anyways, JV was also a starter on those Grizzlies and Pelicans teams when Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, and the guys at the time were all an ascending team on the uprise. JV's vet experience was able to help get the Memphis Grizzlies into the playoffs in 2021, kicking San Antonio and Golden State out. The same thing happened the year after with the New Orleans Pelicans, where he helped kick out San Antonio once again and beating the LA Clippers again. His toughness, rebounding, and post defense was a key factor to why those Grizzlies and Pelicans teams made the playoffs in the fashion they did. Obviously, it was a total clown show between Washington and Sacramento, but I think with Jonas Valanciunas going to the Denver Nuggets, even though there are reports saying that, he wants to play for a team in Greece because I guess he doesn't want to be a backup to Nikola Jokic. Imagine not wanting to be a backup to the best player in one of the best players in basketball. But with Jonas Valanciunas coming off the bench, it gives Nikola Jokic a lot of time to rest because the issue the last 2 years, and I guess in 2023 as well, even though they were able to win the championship, is that the over-reliance on Nikola Jokic ultimately burned the guy out. And he had nothing left in those 2 Game 7s, obviously one in 2024, and then this past year against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Long story short, the Denver Nuggets answered their depth problems by adding really good to great bench pieces. Obviously, those 4 guys I named were starters at one point or another, especially with competitive teams. Cam with the Suns, JV with the Raptors, Tim Hardaway with the Pistons and the Dallas Mavericks, and obviously Bruce Brown was a star a few times with Denver in the year they won the championship, and obviously when he was with the Brooklyn Nets as well. Now let's talk about the Atlanta Hawks, because obviously they answered their depth issues, but in a different way. So obviously one of the main things that the Atlanta Hawks did was trading George Niang for Kristaps Porzingis. Obviously Porzingis was one of the reasons why the Boston Celtics won the chip in 2024. Other notable moves that the Atlanta Hawks made were the acquisitions of Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Luke Kennard. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was arguably the Timberwolves' best defender the last 2 years outside Jay McDaniels. Obviously, last year they had DiVincenzo, they had Randall, Ant-Man himself played some defense. Mike Conley, even at 38, 39 years old, was able to play some defense here and there. But overall, I think bringing Nickeil Alexander off the bench with his clutch shooting and his defense, obviously you've seen what he did against guys like Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and then in the semifinals in 2024, I should say, against Jamal Murray. And then you saw what he did these past playoffs, defending Jimmy, defending Pods, defending Luka at times, and LeBron at times, Austin Reeves. Obviously, he wasn't able to defend Shea and J-Dub because that team was just pretty much unguardable throughout most of the year, even though Denver and the Pacers gave him a fight for their money. Nickeil Alexander was one of the Timberwolves' key players on why they made those runs in the fashion they did. Now Atlanta is able to get that, and Trey's able to play with a guy like that. Obviously, when it comes to Luke Kennard, I've seen what he can do with the LA Clippers. I've seen him hit big, timely threes next to Paul George, next to Kawhi Leonard, next to Reggie Jackson, and he's going to be playing with guys like Jalen Johnson, Kristaps Porzingis, Trae Young. Obviously, he'll be a compliment off the bench. I've seen him hit shots with the Memphis Grizzlies next to Ja Morant and Desmond Bane the last 2 times Luke was in the playoffs with that team. While Kennard himself is not a defender, I think the Atlanta Hawks really are starting to rebrand themselves as a more defensive-oriented team, especially with the major development of players like Jalen Johnson, who continues to develop, obviously, and then Zachary Risachet, Dyson Daniels, and all these other guys. And in a tight ball game where you need reliable defense to help you get the stops you need, it gives Trae Young a viable amount of time to rest on the bench. You'll have a lineup of Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson, Zach Risachet, Porzingis, and Okongwu, depending on the situation and depending on who's hurt as well. Because Porzingis, that's the only drawback about him, is that his inability to stay healthy is what ultimately costed a team like the Boston Celtics that series against the New York Knicks. Obviously, there were a lot of other factors. Kristaps being injured was not the end-all be-all, you know what I'm saying? But when you have those guys out on the floor, it gives Trae Young a viable amount of time to rest. And also, the biggest thing, and I read a lot of posts about this, Trae is the only guy on that Atlanta Hawks squad that is under 6'3", which is huge. Because in the past, the Atlanta Hawks gave him Lou Williams and Aaron Holiday. Aaron is a better defender than Lou Will and Trae, but again, he's undersized. Lou Will, undersized. And he's the same, I think he's the same amount of, he's the same height and weight as Trae, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that too. But you get guys with length. You get guys with defense. Luke Kennard might not be a defender, but he's a guy with length that could really change the game with his shooting. And again, with the things he did with Reggie Jackson, Paul George, Marcus Morris Sr., and Kawhi Leonard, I think he'll get those same type of looks playing next to Trae Young and Jalen Johnson and Kristaps Porzingis. And obviously, Nickeil Alexander being a dog of a defender he complements that Atlanta defense really, really well. Now, obviously, they tried the same thing in 2023 with guys like DeJounte Murray. John Collins was still on the team. Onyeka Okongwu was like in his, third year. And then Clint Capella was still on the team as well. But I think this team is way different because, again, you have guys with length that can play defense. Dyson Daniels is a dog of a defender. Again, Nickeil Alexander is a dog of a defender. Jalen Johnson, Risa Shea, and Porzingis, obviously those guys are dogs of defenders as well. And then the continued improvement of Onyeka Okongwu as well. So this team is much different than that 2023 team that was supposed to be a formidable opponent in the East with Trae and DeJounte. And again, I think getting those three guys between Porzingis, Kennard, and Alexander Walker, I think it brings a new type of dynamic that this Hawks team desperately needed. Again, building around Trae, you need to put length around him. Obviously, he may not be Luka, but him and Luka have the same problems, albeit for different reasons. They're both defensively deficient players. So what do? You give them reliable defenders and get a couple of them that can score the ball, but can also spell you defensively as well. And I think the Atlanta Hawks, and I trust Quinn Snyder with this, I think they'll do a good job shielding Trae on defense, especially in the midst of a tight game. And then with Nikola Jokic, same type of thing. Even though shielding Nikola Jokic on defense wasn't too much of a problem the last 2 years, I think getting guys like Bruce Brown, Tim Hardaway Jr., Cam Johnson, and Jonas Valanciunas, especially Bruce, Cam, and JV, I think it'll give, and obviously you bring Peyton Watson off the bench as well, and then Christian Brown being the defender he is. Obviously, when you have those guys coming off the bench in the midst of a tight game, it could give guys like Jamal and Jokic ample amount of time to rest. And again, with Valanciunas, I think he'll be a better backup big than a guy like Mason Plumlee. He'll be a better backup big than DeAndre Jordan. DeAndre Jordan can go back to being the Udonis Haslem of the Denver Nuggets locker room. And obviously the play of Deron Holmes is huge as well. Even though he blew out his ACL last year, which prevented him from playing, I think if you give him some ample time on the Denver Nuggets court to see how he fits, he could fizzle out for that second string big man spot, and then Valanciunas will be bumped down to the third string big man, if anything. So I guess that's why JV probably is pretty hesitant to play with Jokic, because again, if Deron Holmes plays out of his mind off the Nugget bench and he plays better than Valanciunas, JV can be expendable. But at the same time, JV can also be a reliable big next to Jokic as well. And again, for Atlanta, Trae gets floor spacers and he gets length to shield them on defense, which I think is key to building a team around not just Trae Young, but any small guard in general. You need those type of players like the Nickeil Alexanders, the Dyson Daniels, the Kristaps Porzingises. Obviously, we've seen it with a bit of Kyrie this year when he was by himself. You had Klay Thompson, PJ Washington, Najee Marshall, Anthony Davis, and all these other cats, man. So, and obviously, you saw with Derrick Rose in the past as well, with guys like Boozer, Jimmy, Joakim Noah, and all these other cats, Taj Gibson. Now, obviously, I do expect the Denver Nuggets and the Atlanta Hawks to make a deep postseason run once again. Obviously, if these two teams falter, it'll raise more questions about the future of both Nikola Jokic and Trae Young with their respective teams. I think both teams do not have any excuses to not win it all this year, because obviously the Nuggets got significantly better. I think they're going to compete in a very competitive Western Conference, and I won't be surprised if they're the number one seed in the Western Conference this upcoming year. And on the other side, with the Atlanta Hawks, with the East being dismantled with the injuries of Tyrese Halliburton and Jason Tatum, I think the Atlanta Hawks, I think they can quietly sneak up to the number 4 seed, 3 seed, 2 seed, and don't be surprised if you see Atlanta at the number 1 seed. Obviously, with the Knicks, the Sixers wanting to bounce back from what was a disastrous year last year, and then obviously Boston's going to try to be competitive, same with Indiana, the Orlando Magic getting guys like Tyus Jones and Desmond Bane. But I think this could be the year that they could really, really, really make some noise in the Eastern Conference, especially with the Eastern Conference being in shambles with the aforementioned injuries to those two players I just named. But Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think these two won the offseason? Do you guys think I'm sleeping on a certain team? Do you guys think a team like the Lakers won the offseason? Do you guys think the Clippers won the offseason with their acquisitions? Do you think the Bucks won the offseason? Whoever you guys think won the offseason, if you guys don't necessarily agree with this opinion, let me know in the comment section below. Again, more gameplay videos and more offseason videos coming your way soon. I'm definitely enjoying this a lot. So once again, hit that like, comment, and subscribe. But until the next video, that's the end of this video. I'm X. Deuces.